It's been around 4 months ago that Andre introduced the idea of vibe coding, and it kind of blew up the internet, and everybody talking about how they are using this LLM in order to generate their production ready code. But from someone who has been experiencing and working on these LLM agents for so long, we all know that the results are not as expected. So they are somehow debatable, and sometimes you get good results, sometimes you get bad results, and it is off to whether your results are aligned with what LLM have been trained on, and sometimes you're just stuck in the loop, and so many problems that comes with it. In this video, I'm going to talk about context engineering. So the prompt engineering has now been changed into context engineering that everybody right now is hyped up about it. And we also do a demo that I walk you through the whole thing, and you get an understanding of how you can use of this context engineering. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Welcome everyone to your channel, AI Fun Fact for All. For those of you who are new to this channel, my name is Pedram. I have a PhD in computer science, and I have knowledge over 10 years in AI and machine learning and coding. And in this video, as we mentioned, we want to talk about context engineering. More specifically, I want to give you my experience on how I think is the best streamlined way that you can use, and you finally can actually create a very good performing results. So we talked about it in the very beginning. Andre actually introduced this idea of vibe coding, and it was just that, okay, you just trust how the LLM can generate the result based on what you're describing to it, and magically, based on how your code is similar to what its data that it was trained on look like, it can generate the results, and then you can basically go through some back and forth, and hopefully you will get the result that you want. And it was usually limited to the MVP, and then if you want to productionize it, you realize that, okay, it's not gonna work. So here we can see that from this article from Kodo, it actually shows the confidence hallucination divide from lots of AI engineers that are basically senior developers, and you see that 76% are actually have a low confidence on the result, and they see a high hallucination on the results from the LLM. And when you look at the where the results are mostly from, you will see that it is mostly from the fact that the LLM is not provided enough context. And when you don't do that, we have seen that in the chat as well, that when you want to just play a conversation and talk about something, if it is very specific criteria, you need to make sure that you provided enough context. And there's so many ideas like future learning, the RAG, the memory preference, and so on. Post from Toby, the CEO of Shopify, that they say that like the idea of context engineering over prompt engineering. And then there is an important sentence in here that I actually really like, is that it describes the core skill better. So the art of providing a context for the task to be plausible solved by the LLM. Now, this is very important, because if you don't provide the required information to the LLM, then basically it is just like tossing a coin, that whether you get a good result or not, and then how are you gonna get it in a persistent manner in a bigger project that you want to consider it for production. So then Andre come back, introduce this idea of context engineering over prompt engineering, that discuss that, okay, yes, it makes sense that we provide the enough information to this context through the LLM, we can get the result and kind of own the process. There's also a very nice article from LangChain that talk about the rise of context engineering. By the way, I put the link all of these content in the description of the video, so you can check them out yourself. But back to the video in here, they define the context engineering is to building dynamic systems that provide the right information and tool at the right format such that the LLM can plausibly accomplish the task. They mentioned that LLM applications are evolving from single prompt to more complex dynamic agentic system, and the context engineering is becoming the most important skill an AI engineer can develop. So this is a very bold statement. I'm not sure if I 100% agree with it, but you can kind of get the idea of what do we mean by this context engineering and how is it important. So if you want to get more information about it, I also have a post in my website that breaks down this context engineering, and we are saying that why context window is very important, and how we can actually define this context to retrieve the information that we want. So if you look at the whole picture, if you are someone that learns from the visual context, you can see that this context engineering include the structure output, the prompt engineering, and the state history, memory, and rack. So you see the prompt engineering, just very small portion of it. The memory is any information that you persistently provide to the LLM that try to align it. We will see that in our demo, how we can set that up. And then we have a state or history, which basically track what has been accomplished so far, because LLM themselves are stateless. So whenever you call them, they have no idea of what has been accomplished before. And obviously there's a context window. You cannot put everything into the context of a very large project. So you need a very streamlined way to actually store this state and history, so that LLM actually have the idea of the current state. And then obviously we have RAG, which basically talk about any relevant information, any API documentation, any different information that are maybe very nuanced for your application or very recent, or you want to make sure that the LLM actually completely follow that. That's necessarily very helpful in the API integration. So we also touch on that in our demo. This is the GitHub. I put the whole document inside the whole code base that you can use inside the GitHub completely for free. So here is the one that we will start with, and then after that we will go over the completed one, which is the one that I try to accomplish it, and then we will see how the results going to look like. So for this one, if you want to take a look at it, I have built it on top of a Gemini API. You can basically also convert it into Claude. That's very simple, but we're gonna use a Gemini CLI in this video. I have created a previous video on how to use Gemini CLI. I put the link at the end of it. We'll talk about PRPs, or the production requirements prompts. This is the very important concept in here. I provided some example. If you can put your few shot examples in here, we have the env.example, what you can put as your keys, and then some initial, main, and readme. So here is a very complete talk about what is going on in here. For this, I'm gonna choose a very simple project that is going to create an end-to-end wrapper and create a backend with fast API that try to connect to Gemini, and then have a Streamlit as our front end, and then we can do a chat. Very simple stuff in here. So you can see the process basically in here. We have our main.md, which actually talk about the structure of what we are going to have inside it. So the project awareness and context, so what's included, what is the code structure and modularity, testing and reliability, the task completion, the style of the conversation. So you're basically owning each individual step of what needs to happen. That's gonna be the entry point, and then after that we have some initial. So I provide an initial example, but this is a placeholder. You can put your examples, your documentation, other consideration, and the feature that you want to develop in here. I have provided one in here, which basically we're gonna use for this, as we mentioned, like fast API backend, acting as a wrapper for Gemini API, and using a Streamlit for the front end. So you can provide example if you want, and then the documentation. This is the RAG component. You provide the API documentation here, and any other consideration, something that you want, like for example how to run, where to put, where to get the results, where to put the env, how to implement and write the command for it, and so on. So without further ado, let's jump right into the demo part. The first thing you need to do is that you need to clone the GitHub, and then it will come to your directory, and then inside it you will create .env, and you put your Gemini API code, basically your API there, and then after that you basically open up a terminal and you will just type Gemini. So I have created a video for this Gemini CLI, and we can go over that after this video, so you get more information on how to set this up. At the time of recording this video, Gemini CLI doesn't support a custom command. This is something that Claude actually supported, but you can see in here that it is an open issue for them, so they are trying to solve it. So for now we need to work a little bit different, but after that you can just write slash the command and then the input. So up to that point where they implemented this basic custom command, you can still run it like this. You can say run and then find this specific basically file, which actually located in .gemini commands, and then generate PRP, or the basically production requirement prompts, and then you're gonna say okay, replace the argument. Now you want to select the arguments that you want, which is going to be your initial example. That's the example that I've provided. So what it will do is that it will look at the code and then it will try to define the task and do the analysis. So after some time, it actually created this Gemini wrapper for us. That's going to be our production requirement, and it has a high confidence score of the result. So this is also another important consideration, which you ask the LLM to say that how confident it is about the response that it gets. So we have that result in here. After we have that, so completely automated, now what we need to do is that we can just say okay, now implement Gemini command execute prep.md and replace the argument with the document that it just generated, which is the Gemini wrapper.md. So basically what happened is that the first step, we create a product requirement, and then on the second step we run it. Since the Gemini right now doesn't support it, we need to write that prompt, but later on we can just say a slash, because right now Gemini CLI command starts with a slash, but it has its own commands. You cannot define a new command, but it will come soon, and then you can just basically write execute prep and then give the basically the location of your PRP to generate it. So basically the whole process now streamline into this. So here's the product requirement that it creates, like the fast API streaming interface, which creates the purpose of it, the core principle that we have. It provided the goal, why we are doing this, what we are trying to achieve, what are the success criteria, and each of them has this placeholder, the context that we need in order to generate the documentation and references. So these are the YAML file, the structure, like how the code base is gonna look like. It's all generated. So if you have gotcha and library quirks, we can provide in here, and then some implementation blueprints, data model and a structure, Pydantic, and then you can also provide the list of tasks. So basically create a step-by-step what are the tasks that needs to be completed. The first is the backend, and then the front end, and then adding the test cases, and then creating the documentation. And test cases actually include two type of test cases, both the basically the unit test and also the integration test. So completely a streamlined process. So here it create the integration points, and then here create the validation loop. We are using rough to check to fix any error before process. So some of the nice idea to do the level 2 is our unit test, so we run it with PyTest. The next one is the integration test, so you run it with Unicorn, and then finally the validation checklist. So it's going to take a look and see that the MyPy actually doesn't provide any type error, no lightning error with rough, and then all the tests have been passed, and the application starts with this, and then some pattern, some confidence score at the end, and the reason for this score. So you see that it creates the whole stack of the step-by-step blueprint of what needs to be completed and how it needs to be gone. So now we can see that the results already. I've done a few small changes, so these things you can later on again add it to your rules or production requirement or your blueprint, so it will consider that. For example, for me, I have multiple projects working on, so I prefer to have a virtual environment. You can basically put that as your requirement, so it doesn't ask you for that. And then also basically the different installation and so on. So those has passed, and it actually implemented all of them, and it basically pretty much working very well. So based on this understanding, it is working very well. For running, I also need to do a small quick change, which was the .env. The .env file did not get loaded, so we basically go into the main and actually did the load env before actually calling the Gemini services in here, which actually required the Gemini API key. So that was the only changes that I asked to do. And how you do it is very simple. You're just gonna say that here is the code, this is the error. Now the Gemini actually tried to look at it, but the whole purpose is that we want to minimize this. So when you see these patterns such as the .venv or basically loading the .env file before calling that, these things can actually be inside your the main.md, that basically you provide what you care about, and what are the style convention, or what are the things that you that it must be followed. So this will gonna be your core principles that can be applied, so next time you don't need to intervene. So the whole purpose is that we want to minimize this intervene. So now what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna run the server. So if you go, it basically updated also the documentation. So in here they actually tell after you actually activate your env and put your env in Gemini API key into your env, then also like the pip install and everything, then you record backend, and you run it in the background, but I'm not gonna run it in the background, just run it in here. So the backend is running. Now I also want to run the front end. So the front end, you just need to do this, and then after that it actually run it inside this basic network URL. So this is the Streamlit application. It says that ask a question, so I can say for example, what is 2 plus 5, and then it basically connect to Gemini and basically provide us the answer. I have also put this completed project inside the GitHub, so you can also go ahead and check on that, so you make sure that you actually can get the result. And there you have it, guys. We went over the context engineering, a very important principle of writing high quality code and make it more streamlined to go beyond just very simple chat and ad hoc conversation and lots of hope and not getting the best result for sure. So this will basically minimize the kind of stochasticity and lots of issues that the LLMs might have, and provide a very streamlined process for you so you get the result that you want. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like it. More importantly, subscribe to the channel. And if you want to get the information about the technology and something that is happening regularly completely for free, you can actually join my newsletter, and then you can get these new information such as this context engineering, and then you can get on top of the game. If you want to know how you can get started with Gemini AI, you can watch this video that I created and that talk about how you can start working with it, or you can watch this video that I talk about AI engineering and the principles that you can use in order to build successful app. Thanks for watching, and see you until the next one.